to the Soccer Chaplains United podcast from the Touchline. And now, here's your host, Rev Brad.
Hey friends, welcome to the podcast today. It's the month of May 2025, and one of the things that I wanted to do is talk about mental health. Mental health is a massive issue in professional sport and in football and soccer. And so what I'd like to do and what I try to do usually every May on the podcast is to do something related to mental health. So past few years, we've had my good friend Brooke Ewert, who does counseling. We've had her in on the podcast. You can go back and kind of look through the different years, but we try to usually focus in on something. And I thought this year, something that's really helpful, I think, is how can I integrate my faith, my belief, into helping me with my own mental health issues and struggles that I face, whether you're a footballer, an athlete, a coach, whether you're someone else around the game. How can we integrate our faith better? And I think none better than Luke 24. There's a passage that I usually use as I speak with people about grief. Now, a couple things, just full disclosure. It's been a whirlwind the past few weeks. Driving down, getting my daughter, who graduated with a degree in psychology from Grand Canyon University, coming back, and just all of the work and everything going on for this month has really put me under a time crunch. And so as I was thinking through, I really struggled because I feel like, is this a little bit of a rehash? So just full disclosure here. I aired a podcast August 29, 2019. You can go back and listen to it. I'm going to be using that sort of template for a little bit of the next 4 weeks, this week and the next 3, as we go through May and talk about mental health. Also, I just preached on this text, so maybe you can understand that there's been a lot going on. But I just preached on this text that we're going to go through over the next few weeks at Cherry Creek Presbyterian Church in Denver, Colorado. You can go listen to, there's 2 services that I did. Each one's a little bit different, but you can find those on YouTube. On the YouTube channel, just look up Cherry Creek Presbyterian Church, and you can hear it kind of put forward more as a sermon than it is as a podcast. So, friends, what I want to do is take the passage of Luke 24, verse 13 through 36, and I want to share with you ways that we can use a text like this to help us understand how we go through our own times of grief and how we go through times in which not even grief might feel like a strong word. Some people come and they're like, Rev, come on, my life isn't over. It's not like someone just died on me. But in truth, we all have these emotional things that draw down our mental health, and whether that affects our performance or affects us in other ways in life. All these things are huge, massive challenges for us. So again, wanting to give us a sense in which how can Scripture, how can our faith, Christian faith especially, help inform these moments when we have mental health struggles and challenges. And again, what we're gonna do is listen to a text. My good friend Fraser Kay, pastor in Scotland, he and I were in seminary together. He's read this passage for me, and I'm going to play that right now. And we'll listen to Luke 24, verses 13 through 36. So if you want to follow along, if you want to read this later on when you are in front of a physical Bible or you've got your phone and your app open, I encourage you to do that just to let this resonate and simmer. So what we'll do each week, we'll listen to the full-on passage, and then I'm just going to break this down into 4 bits so it's not too much and not too long. So give Fraser a listen right now as he reads Luke 24, verse 13 through 36.
Now, that same day, 2 of them were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem. They were talking with each other about everything that had happened. As they talked and discussed these things with each other, Jesus himself came up and walked along with them, but they were kept from recognizing him. he asked them, "What are you discussing together as you walk along?" They stood still, their faces downcast. One of them, named Cleopas, asked him, "Are you the only one visiting Jerusalem who does not know the things that have happened there in these days?" "What things?" he asked. "About Jesus of Nazareth," they replied. "He was a prophet, powerful in word and deed before God and all the people. The chief priests and our rulers handed him over to be sentenced to death, and they crucified him. But we had hoped that he was the one who was going to redeem Israel. And what is more, it is the third day since all this took place. In addition, some of our women amazed us. They went to the tomb early this morning, but didn't find his body. They came and told us that they had seen a vision of angels, who said he was alive. Then some of our companions went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said, but they did not see Jesus." He said to them, "How foolish you are, and how slow to believe all that the prophets have spoken. Did not the Messiah have to suffer these things and then enter his glory?" And beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he explained to them what was said in all the scriptures concerning himself. As they approached the village to which they were going, Jesus continued on as if he were going farther. But they urged him strongly, "Stay with us, for it is nearly evening. The day is almost over." So he went in to stay with them. When he was at the table with them, he took bread, gave thanks, broke it, and began to give it to them. Then their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and he disappeared from their sight. They asked each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he talked with us on the road and opened the scriptures to us?" They got up and returned at once to Jerusalem. There they found the 11 and those with them, assembled together and saying, "It is true, the Lord has risen and has appeared to Simon." Then the two told what had happened on the way, and how Jesus was recognized by them when he broke the bread. While they were still talking about this, Jesus himself stood among them and said to them, "Peace be with you."
Again, this is one of my favorite biblical texts, and God, thank you for your word, which I pray that for my friends listening today would illumine their own lives and their own struggles, their darkness they may be going through. I pray this in your name. As one of my favorite texts, I've sat on it for a while. I've studied it extensively, and probably there's more study that I could do. It just feels like each time there's something richer. So if you go back and listen to the podcast of 2019, this is a little bit different because, as I said, I've grown in the understanding. I see some different things, and perhaps preparing to talk about this as a sermon, speaking with Christian people in a church on a Sunday, it's going to come across a little bit different than on a podcast. So you're going to see and feel some of the growth if you touch in with some of those points. If you go back to 2019 and again, maybe even watch the YouTube channel from May 3rd and preaching at the church. So the first thing that I want to point out in this text, and what I'm going to do is pair together the actions of the people, the disciples as we see them, as we understand them, and the actions of Jesus. I want to put them together in these nice little cute containers. It doesn't always fit or work, and it might feel to you a little bit of a stretch, but just for simplicity's sake, I just want 2 quick lessons out of each pod for the next few weeks. Okay, so here's the first lesson. Lesson number 1, drill it, write it down, put it in your brain, is that Jesus draws near and walks with them. Okay, Jesus draws near and walks with them. We see it in verse 15 that these 2 people are going along the road and they're talking and discussing. And in other points and places I've talked and emphasized that, like how sometimes we go through grief and trauma or we're in difficult moments, and we just try to talk it out because we almost can't believe it. But here's the point: is that Jesus makes the first move, and the truth is that God is always making the first move. He's always moving towards us, and we see that throughout all of history. We see it all the way back to the garden, Genesis 3. Adam and Eve have sinned. They've messed up. They've tried to fix their shame, their issues themselves. They're hiding in the bushes because they know that something's wrong. It's not quite how they wanted it. And now they're dealing with the consequences of sin and shame. And so they're hiding there in the garden, and God comes walking in the cool of the day. From the text, we understand that this is probably a natural rhythm. He comes walking and asking, hey, where are you? And the truth is that God knows. God knows where they are. He knows they're hiding, but he's calling out, drawing out. But here's the thing, is that God draws near. And God draws near. We see this so many times throughout the pages of Scripture. And, I don't know that everyone that listens to the podcast is a Christian believer, a person of faith. I don't know that everyone who listens to the pod is someone who has grabbed onto these ideas or even experienced this happening in their own life, been able to see it. But there's other examples. I think, if we go a little bit further on past the resurrection story, we see Philip running up alongside the Ethiopian eunuch who's reading an Old Testament text in the chariot as they travel the road, and Philip runs up on him. He draws near. God, the Holy Spirit, moves Philip, maybe even supernaturally in some way, because we don't know how fast the chariot's moving, moves Philip up and along and alongside. And so it's this aspect of God drawing near. There's other examples I want to share with you just to show you the full breadth of this, is that, David writes in Psalm 34, the Lord is close to the brokenhearted, and he saves those who are crushed in spirit. John, as he's writing out the gospel, says, the Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. I love how Eugene Peterson puts it. He says, the Word moved into the neighborhood. And so we get this sense that there's this sense that God is always drawing near to us. And it doesn't matter, my friends, where you are, where you've been, where you're going. God draws near and goes with us. David reflects and writes on this in Psalm 23. He talks about the valley of the shadow of death, and understanding that the presence of God is with him even in that difficult, dark moment, dark place. Psalm 139. He also writes. He says, if I go up to the heights of the heaven, or if I'm in the depths of the earth, literally almost like the grave, like there God is with me. And so here's this action and activity. And my friends, if you're a footballer, you've likely been around the globe. You've likely been around the country. You've likely been away from home. You've been away from familiarity. You've been alone, isolated, maybe just striving, trying to make that team, get the contract, or to get on, to get out, to get somewhere else, wherever that is, and God draws near to you. Maybe, and we'll get into this in a second, maybe you've seen it, maybe you've not, maybe you've experienced it, maybe you've not, but the truth is that God is always drawing near to us. He always takes the first step. He always makes the first move. And so I just want to stop for a moment and just say, lesson number one, God's drawing near. Have you seen that? Can you see that right now in your life? How can you see that? And I think that there's very many different circumstances and events and stories in our lives where we can say, and oftentimes in reverse, we can go, oh, that's where God was. That's where he was leaning into and coming alongside of me. This gets into the second point, and the second point, last point that I want to cover for today's pod is that the disciples can't see Jesus. Verse 16, as we encounter these two disciples on the road, they're blind. They can't, as the NIV puts it, can't recognize Jesus. And they knew who Jesus was. They had seen him before. As we get a sense of it, reading on the rest of the sort of post-resurrection stories, it's not that Jesus was so unrecognizable, but obviously something's going on here. Now, if you read the text, you'll get different, and if you read like some commentaries or notes on things, you'll see scholars say different things. Some scholars will say, well, the two people were walking toward the west. The sun was setting as the afternoon and evening was approaching. So maybe just with the way the light was and Jesus and the approach, and maybe they couldn't see him because of that. And, if you've been anywhere in the world where either you're waking up or to a sunrise or you're driving home to a sunset, like, that sun can get in your eyes and blind you and be difficult for you to see. That could be one thing. Now, was it divine intervention? Was God saying, look, I want to I want to create a story here. I want to create a moment. I want these disciples to go through something so they have something to share and talk about. Could have been divine intervention by God. Others say, no, this is satanic. This is the devil. He's licking his chops. He's been defeated. He's understanding some things now. And now his focal point becomes, how do I move people away from Jesus, away from Christ? So is it Satan at work? And I think this is where I land. Really where I land is maybe it's a mix of all these things. But if you've ever been in that disorienting state, you'll know this moment when you can't see, you can't recognize even someone trying to help you, even someone that loves you. And I think sometimes what we do is we lash out in a moment when we're disoriented. I think of several of the athletes that throughout the years, they get the phone call, the text, the message, I've been traded, I've been cut, I've been waived. That's something that goes on here in the U.S. in our side of the game, is we have these transactional moments that sometimes we don't even know are coming. We might have put it out there to our agent, like, hey, I'm looking, I'd like another situation or club or a different thing. But there's sometimes that news comes out in different ways, that the contract isn't being renewed, and all of a sudden it's on social media before our agents called us or before the clubs notified us in a more professional way. That those things happen in such a way, and they provide disorientation because we're not quite sure, where's this coming from, and why did this happen, and what's next, and where do I go? And so we have that kind of disorienting state. I've called and I've said in the message that I preached a couple times on Sunday and some other places, I mention a few personal disorienting moments in my life. One that I'll just say right here, because I think it's one that many of us can relate to. Just a few years ago with COVID, I remember there was an all-staff meeting for the club I served, the Colorado Rapids, and even myself coming in as a volunteer, I showed up at the all-staff meeting. It was very short, maybe 20, 30 minutes. We briefly talked about, or it was shared, hey, there's a global pandemic, and we're going work from home. We're going remote, and we're shutting down. And so there was a sense of, when will we see these people next? When will the next game be played? And literally this just came after a home win. And so there was this excitement and exuberance around the season. And it was just very early in the year. I remember March 2020 when this meeting happened. And now all of a sudden people are walking away going, am I going to have a job? Are we going to have a season, for the chaplains? Like, are we going to be allowed around the team again? And those moments of disorientation become weighty for us. They tax us in our mental health and our mental well-being. So we'll get into a few more things next week, my friends. But what I want to remind you about is that even in a moment when you feel like you might be asking, where's God? Where's God in all this? Where's God in my situation? Where's God in, maybe it's something that has to do with your football. Maybe it's something that has to do more with your faith or your family. I don't know what that moment may be. But the truth is this, is that Jesus draws near. He's drawing near. He's close, closer than you and I can imagine or see or know. And I don't know what that looks like for you. I don't know how that shapes up. But I just want to say, even if you can't see in this moment, in this time, just hear these words that Jesus is moving closer. And we'll get into some things next week. Thanks again for joining me, friends. And hey, just, I just pray that your mental health and well-being through this month of May, that could be something that you work on and something that you integrate better your faith into your mental health and well-being, your spiritual well-being. All right, my friends, take care. This has been Rev Brad coming to you from the Touchline.